What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 33 of Godzillatober, Godzilla vs. Kong. This is the first in two movies that were directed back-to-back by Adam Wingard and both heavily feature Kong. Let's go.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching. I'm Jared Fearing.
I'm a lifelong Godzilla fan and a big fan of Halloween.
And nothing says Halloween like monster movies.
So this year, for the month of October,
we're going to review every single Godzilla movie, from Gojira all the way to Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire.
So join me this month for a new video every single day and see if I go insane in the process. Let's get to it. This movie had me worried because I wasn't really sure if they should have introduced Kong and Godzilla so soon in the franchise. Up until this point, we've only had two Godzilla movies in the MonsterVerse, King of the Monsters and Godzilla 2014, and one Kong movie, Skull Island, which is phenomenal if you've never seen it. And so to go so quickly to have them fight each other, it seems a little bit fast. But if you think about the Showa era, Godzilla fighting King Kong was right away. That was actually the third movie. So having this be the third Godzilla movie is not really a stretch at all. And to make matters better for it, Skull Island was so good. They did such a good job of building up the Kong character that I was almost more worried that this movie wouldn't stick the landing because that one's so good. You don't want to see it go from being like excellent to terrible. Another thing that was crazy about this movie was that this came out during the height of COVID. And this was in 2021, where, at least in Canada, things were kind of opening selectively, and our theaters were open, but they would kind of be like open, closed, who knows what's going on, back and forth. Are we going to get this in a theatrical showing or not? Who knows? And at that time, I was able to look ahead and see that it was listed and that we had tickets available for sale. And the week before it came out, I'm pretty sure it was the week before it came out, they closed the theaters again. So I did not get to see this movie for many, many months. It did get released on digital before it actually came to the theater here. So I saw this movie at home during COVID. And while I was watching it, I just kept thinking man, I wish I was watching this in the theater. So many months later, during the summer, when it did eventually come out, I did go see it again in the theater. So the whole COVID release made it a very confusing time to see if this was going to be successful or not. But actually, for a large part of 2021, this was the biggest movie in the world. It made a ton of money and was a huge success. This was a movie that was critically successful as well as audience successful. The fans really liked it. Now, this is a Godzilla movie, but it should be known to you if you've never seen this or the sequel, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, are much more Kong movies than they are Godzilla movies. Godzilla features heavily in both, and of course he's integral to the plot, but for sure the focus is more on Kong. Just 20 minutes into this movie and you've already seen so much monster action. One thing Adam Wingard said in the build-up to this movie and also New Empire is that he understands that the fans don't really care so much about the human aspect of it. And I think that point of view finally kind of being adopted by one of the directors is, one, it's a great take because it's absolutely right, and two, it shows somebody that is a fan of the franchise and was obviously growing up watching these movies and having these kind of same thoughts and being well, the humans are supplementary to the monster action. And so enough with the giant contrived human plots. And I love King of the Monsters. If you haven't watched that video yet, go back and check out me talking about King of the Monsters. But one of the things that I know the fans really didn't like was the human story. And in my opinion, that's actually one of the better human stories in the franchise. So for sure, it's a smart move to start moving away from the humans being a main aspect and more towards the extended monster sequences. And they do that here very well. The movie moves along at a good clip, and the plot is kind of all over the map, really. They want to take Kong off of Skull Island and use him as a way to direct them into Hollow Earth. and they think Hollow Earth is going to be housing this new type of energy. And secretly, the company that's funding the whole expedition, Apex, they want this energy to power their Mechagodzilla. Super insane, like, villainy, but whatever, cool. They're afraid of taking Kong off of Skull Island because they think he's an Alpha Titan, and the second they take him off, Godzilla just wants to throw hands. There can only be one Alpha Titan, and the second they take Kong off, sure enough, Godzilla comes for him. They have a really great battle at sea, and it's got tons of great action with, like, Kong throwing airplanes, getting drug under the water. And I really like all the combat in this movie. We see Godzilla shoot his atomic breath out of the water and into the sky, and it really like gives me Goku Kamehameha vibes. And I know that Dragon Ball is influential on these new MonsterVerse movies, and it's really interesting. I'll talk more about the Dragon Ball connection actually in the Godzilla x Kong video. So it's very cool to see these two fan favorite franchises like influencing one another back and forth. They get Kong to Antarctica, and when he's all covered in snow and stuff, it looks so good. One of the things is that in King of the Monsters, I think that the CGI was fantastic, but there was a lot of, like in their Antarctic scene, there was a lot of blurriness because there's like snow, and it just kind of makes things a bit harder to see. Lots of smoke and clouds in the last movie, and I love that movie. I'm not trashing it at all, but there are some scenes that are a bit harder to see. All the CGI in this movie and also New Empire are impeccable. The CGI is so good. I've seen people kind of like knock it, and it's like, that's an insane take. This is literally the best CGI on the market. Between this and Planet of the Apes, there is no better CGI in all of cinema right now, which is insane. The detail that you see on Kong and Godzilla, especially in some of the close-ups, is ridiculously good. I can't imagine trying to knock the CGI in this movie. It's as good as it gets. As Kong goes into the Hollow Earth, the humans do a little bit of a 2001 Space Odyssey thing where there's flashing lights and they go through a portal, and it's cool. I like it. And the actual Hollow Earth design is amazing. It looks so good. It's so inventive. They have kind of like battling gravities. There's rocks floating all over the place. There's little bug creatures, big flying snakes that Kong beats up with ease, and he rips off one's head and eats some of its like brains or whatever. I really like that scene. Meanwhile, Godzilla is ticked off. He can tell that they're firing up the Mechagodzilla. They don't explicitly say it, but they play the same sound in the Mechagodzilla that we heard from the Orca in the last movie, the device that is meant to control Titans. I assume that's kind of the connection. There's a few little connections to the previous movie that aren't like explicitly made clear, but you can kind of make assumptions. At the end of King of the Monsters, we see Charles Dance buying one of the Ghidra heads that is severed, and then showing up in this movie, they use a Ghidra skull as a way of connecting to Mechagodzilla. It's like a Neuralink type thing. And there's a moment in this movie where they say that if there's a skull out here controlling Mechagodzilla and there's a skull in there inside of Mechagodzilla, so they're kind of implying that they have two Ghidra skulls, but we never see the one in Mechagodzilla, and it's never really mentioned again. So there's some like details like that maybe they're fleshed out better elsewhere, but they don't really say it. And to be completely fair, the first time I saw this movie, maybe I'm just stupid, but it didn't even occur to me that the one that they had was the one that Charles Dance was buying. Ghidra has 3 heads, and we do see him kind of explode at the end of King of the Monsters, but he also has like Wolverine-like regeneration, so I didn't think it was impossible for there to be all 3 of those skulls out there somewhere. And I still kind of hold on to hope that they'll use that regeneration as a plot point to bring back Ghidra, because it was such a cool monster and so well done. But so Godzilla is going for Mechagodzilla, and Kong is in the middle of the Earth. All the Hollow Earth segments are just beautifully rendered, like incredible CGI. They have great little critters running around. I really like all that stuff. Very, very well done. And one notable thing of Hollow Earth is that there's a brief scene with a big, fat, lovable lizard that the name of is Doug, and the internet went wild for it. Everyone loves Doug. And I even have a little Doug plush here, which is from this was from a special edition collection of the comics that you were able to buy on Kickstarter. While Kong is in the Hollow Earth, he finds an axe from one of his ancestors that is made with presumably a sharp Godzilla scale, and then it's able to charge up the energy that's existing in Hollow Earth and become like a lightsaber axe. It's, a really out there kind of superhero, anime, fantasy type plot point, but I love it. It's sweet. I don't give a shit about realism with these movies because they've already established this is like the Showa era. Whereas when we see -1, very different, extremely realistic, and like them using a Godzilla axe in -1 would not fit at all, and you'd be like, what is going on here? In these movies, they've already established like anything goes, just like the Showa era, and I love that. So Kong gets a sweet lightsaber axe, and also there's a scene where he sits on his like throne. Great scene. I love all the Hollow Earth stuff. Meanwhile, Godzilla, super pissed off, sees that he's charging up the axe, or rather senses it, and uses his atomic breath to blast a hole in the earth. That's right, his atomic breath is so powerful that it blows a hole straight through China into the center of the earth. Super sweet, I love it. It's like a Kamehameha, I love it. Through the hole that Godzilla bore into the earth, Kong is able to come straight to him, and they have a fight in China that looks amazing. It's nighttime, there's neon lights everywhere. It's just gorgeous. I love that scene. They have a great fight, and Godzilla kind of whoops that ass. But it's pretty even, and then Godzilla just gets the upper hand. So when this movie came out, there were still internet posts, and maybe it was just rage baiting, but there was still people on the internet being like, oh, it's ambiguous who won. It's like, no, it's not ambiguous at all. Godzilla like definitively wins. I don't know like who would be making that argument, or how you could even see this as not being definitive. But the director even came out and said it was like, yes, Godzilla won. He's a winner. That's that. And even though Godzilla wins, moments later, Mechagodzilla, who's going out of control, where did we see that before? Kiryu, maybe? Mechagodzilla breaks out of the wall of their underground containment thing and into mainland China, and he starts fighting with Godzilla immediately, and Godzilla doesn't even hesitate to fight the Mechagodzilla android. He just goes straight after him. And it's a really good scene of Godzilla just getting beat up, thrown through buildings, getting his face smashed. And they're able to revive Kong, who's extremely wounded from the Godzilla fight. They revive him by detonating one of the Apex vehicles that gives a big electrical burst to Kong. And I like this plot point only because it reminds me a lot, and for sure this is intentional, but of in King Kong versus Godzilla, that King Kong was powered by electricity. He was able to absorb electricity and have it in his fingertips and stuff. It was such a bizarre plot point in that. I like that they kind of have that throwback here, that like a big jolt of electricity supercharges Kong. And Kong and Godzilla team up, and they're able to destroy Mechagodzilla. I also like this Mechagodzilla plot point because we saw in the original Mechagodzilla, Godzilla needing King Caesar's help for both of them to be able to take down the machine. And Kong is able to supercharge his axe when Godzilla breathes fire on it, his atomic breath, and once it's in its lightsaber mode, he cuts Mechagodzilla to pieces and rips off his head. And that is such a great scene. He holds up the Mechagodzilla head, and I just love it. It's really awesome. If you don't like the MonsterVerse movies, I really would struggle to see like what you do like about Godzilla, because I think that they have captured the essence of what makes a really good Godzilla movie, especially through King of the Monsters and now Godzilla vs. Kong. I think they've really tapped into exactly what is enjoyable about these movies. The human cast here, there's a lot of cast members, and most of them are fine. It's the usual. You don't really care so much about what they're doing. But there's a few like legitimately laugh out loud moments in this movie that I really like. The standout actors, Kaylee Hoddle, who's a deaf-mute girl, Gia. She's great. I actually really like her, which is funny because she's the only actor that obviously doesn't talk. And Brian Tyree Henry in this movie. Okay, so the thing with him is I think he's an excellent actor. I really like him. I really loved him in Bullet Train. He does a great job as a voice actor in the new Transformers 1 movie. I really like Brian Tyree Henry. I don't really like this character though. The character is kind of written in a way that annoys me, but he does his best, and there's some really funny moments with him. I think the funniest moment in the entire Godzilla franchise is in this movie, actually, and it's at the end where the guy who built Mechagodzilla is kind of giving like a supervillain speech about why he did it. And while he's doing it, Mechagodzilla is losing control in the background, and before he can finish, he's crushed by Mechagodzilla. And Brian Tyree Henry is laying there on the ground, like scared of Mechagodzilla, and he's like, "Oh man, I really wanted him to finish that speech," or I was really interested in what he was saying," or something along those lines. But the delivery of it is really funny, and I think that's actually, I thought it was hilarious when I saw it, and I think that that's the funniest moment in all the Godzilla movies. So credit to him for that. It bothers me a little bit that they're doing some continuity with the human characters, but then not letting it kind of live up to the potential. Like, we do have Millie Bobby Brown back, and she's much better in this movie than she was in King of the Monsters. And you know, she's a bit older, so maybe she's a bit better at kind of handling that role. And I think the writing for her is a bit better here. She gets to have like a little bit of some comedic moments, and she's more of a star in this, whereas in the last one, she's kind of along for the ride, and just her role in King of the Monsters kind of annoys me. But I like her here. She's totally fine, does a good job. And they bring back Kyle Chandler for what's essentially a cameo. He's working with Monarch, and he like calls her and is like, "Where are you?" And like he ends up meeting up with her at the end. But he probably has less than a minute total in this movie, and that's kind of unfortunate. I liked him in King of the Monsters, so if you're gonna have continuing on characters, there should maybe be some kind of substance behind it, I think, anyway. But also, like, again, the human stories is not the main appeal of these movies, so whatever, I'm kind of just talking myself in circles now. Speaking of the acting quality, there's one actress who, I didn't even look up her name, but she plays the daughter of the Apex villain who builds Mechagodzilla, and her only job is to basically steal the power source from Hollow Earth. And I think that it's a combination. I don't think she's a very good actress, or at least not in this. Her deliveries weren't that good. But then also her character is also kind of written quite poorly. I think her lines are pretty cringy. The good news about her, though, is she does play kind of an evil character, and she does get crushed by King Kong, and that scene's amazing. So I really enjoy that. But of all the actors in the movie, I think she's kind of the only one that's a weak actor. So whatever, the general level is quite high, I would say, for all the MonsterVerse movies. If you're watching these movies just for the monster action, it's hard to beat this one. Like, the fight scenes are so good between Godzilla and Kong. I really, really like this movie. It's one of my favorites. Again, though, I know a lot of people are kind of upset with the fact that this is really more of a Kong movie, but I don't care. I love it. The Godzilla scenes are great. The Kong scenes are great. I really, really like this one. I highly recommend it. Now, like I said, this movie has tons of crazy stuff. It's got King Kong with an axe that basically turns into a lightsaber, Godzilla blasting a hole in the earth, all kinds of crazy stuff. Very MonsterVerse Showa era stuff. Now, for our next movie, though, we're moving back into like the stark realism that we saw in the original Gojira, and a completely different take on things when right now we're right in the thick of the MonsterVerse. This movie came in and just said, no, this is going to be as realistic as it can be, and that is Godzilla -1. So come back next time for -1.